Welcome to the Cartridge Archive, the show dedicated to chronicling the complete Nintendo 64 library, one cartridge at a time. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Adam. Each episode will pull another game from the shelf and explore its impact on Nintendo 64 history. From beloved classics and hidden gems to forgotten curiosities and infamous disasters, no cartridge is left behind.
Along the way, we'll examine each game's story, its development, legacy, collector value, and the impact it left on the Nintendo 64 library as a whole.
Then, we will put it through the rigorous and totally patented 64-point inspection to determine whether it has what it takes to become Certified 64.
So prestigious. All right, episode number 1. It just makes sense to start this game as our number 1 kickoff episode. We got to start alphabetically, so we're going to do our maiden voyage with the N64 exclusive title, 1080 Degrees Snowboarding. Let's crack open the archive.
The late 1990s were a perfect storm for the rise of snowboarding. The Winter X Games were exploding in popularity, and the 1998 Winter Olympics in Nagano had just welcomed the sport as an official event. And suddenly, snowboarding wasn't just a niche hobby, it was everywhere, and it didn't take long for the video game industry to notice. So Nintendo set out to make a snowboarding game. Not just another arcade racer full of impossible tricks and exaggerated physics, but something that actually attempted to capture the feeling of carving down a mountain with realistic momentum, weight transfer, and a challenging trick system that required perfect landings, or you'd risk being eliminated from competition. Players could choose from 5 snowboarders, each with distinct strengths and personalities, take on 8 different courses, and pull off more than 25 tricks. They did all this while using officially licensed Lamar snowboards and Tommy Hilfiger apparel, both unusual moves for Nintendo during that era that further reinforced their commitment to real-world authenticity. The game offered 2-player multiplayer, Rumble Pack support, and even saved directly to the cartridge without requiring a controller pack. Under the guidance of legendary producer Shigeru Miyamoto, several members of the development team brought everything they'd learned about physics and momentum from having previously worked on Wave Race 64. Instead of rewarding button mashing, this game expected players to learn how to carry speed through turns, balance their landings, and actually master the mountain. Critics loved it. They praised its sense of speed, its visuals, especially its surprisingly deep gameplay. The game went on to sell more than 2 million copies, earned an Interactive Achievement Award from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, and became one of the Nintendo 64's defining sports games, all impressive achievements for a project developed in just 9 months. Its success eventually spawned a GameCube sequel, while the original continued to find fans through the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console libraries, and portions of its soundtrack were even featured in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. More than 25 years later, it's still being introduced to a new generation of players through Nintendo Switch Online. The question is whether its demanding, simulation-inspired approach to snowboarding has aged as well as its reputation has. This week on the Cartridge Archive, 1080 Snowboarding.
All right, 1080 Degrees Snowboarding. Adam, what is your thought about this game all this time later?
So this was not a game that I spent a lot of time with as a kid. I remember ads. I remember seeing it for rent, but I don't know that I ever played it until much, much later. What about you?
This was one of those games where, back in the day, it's a case of, well, if your friend has this game, then you don't get this game so that you can maximize your, shared collection.
Sure. Yeah.
I did not have this game, so this was one that I would borrow. So I played it. We enjoyed the multiplayer, and I definitely had experience with it. I actually remember being pretty decent at it back in the day, but it wasn't one that was actually in my collection. I too do remember the commercials for this, particularly the one that featured a fake snowboarder named Jehu. I don't know if you remember this. At the end of the commercial, he had like a really problematic Indian accent.
Ooh.
The commercial would not age well today if it is how I remember it. And he would say, "This game is 100% Jehu approved," and it was a weird commercial. And I remember my buddy Eric and he was the one who actually had the game for the back and forth trade off. Jehu approved became common vernacular for us when we liked something. It would become Jay who approved. So I remember that honestly more than the game itself in many cases.
Quick note, it was a different time. Just so we don't
It was
endorse
it
that. We're
was
just
a
putting that
different
out there.
time. Yep. It was a lower polygon time. We have since progressed.
I think one thing I thought was pretty interesting that we learned doing the research for this episode was that the actual 1080-degree spin, 3 full rotations in the air, when this game came out, had not happened. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I think we had learned that it happened a couple of years later, I believe, and it has now since happened in Olympic competition. It's happened in
Yeah,
X Games competition.
yeah. So pretty crazy that they would make a game with basically an impossible to complete move as the title. But yeah, the first 1080 in official competition came a couple of years after this game was released. But the current record is a 2,340 degree rotation, and that was landed by, let me see here my notes, Hitaro uh, Ogiwara. I'm probably butchering that name. And that was at the 2025 Winter X Games. So pretty recent on that one.
So this guy, this Ogiwara guy is probably like 10-8. Come on, really? That's like
Yeah.
amateur stuff.
Watch me. Hold my beer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, guys, 1080. That's real impressive. So maybe we'll get a newer spiritual successor of the game, and they'll put this guy on the cover since he's the guy now.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. If it gets another sequel, maybe he'll make the cut. So yeah, the only other little cartridge curiosity that I got here that I wanted to share was that the computer controlled snowboarders in this game actually all had different AI for each of the characters. It's a smaller roster, which we'll get into later, but each of the characters actually play differently when you were playing against them in competition. So you've got one character who's more aggressive, another one that chases the speed, one that focuses on aerial tricks. So they actually would each play differently, which I remember being a selling point of the game. And I think it's something that's pretty cool because it's not really what you would attribute to a game of this age. So the fact that it had that level of ingenuity behind it is, I think, pretty telling.
Yeah, I think definitely they put a good bit of work into it. I do want to make one quick excuse for the game too, just to go back where we said that 1080 hadn't been done. That also, like Street Fighter, like we don't have people shooting out fireballs yet. So like I don't want to be too harsh on 1080 that hadn't happened yet, because I haven't seen anybody shoot fireballs out of their hands
That's true.
either.
That's
So we're
true.
still working
Maybe
on that.
maybe
So
maybe at the next Winter X Games.
everybody goes at their own pace. So we'll get to that point maybe.
Fair enough. I think that's a reasonable approach, and one that, as now podcasting professionals, having a formalized archive judging these games, we should adopt that
Yeah,
mentality.
I think this officially makes us both professionals and, I would say, internet humorist. I think that's something we can put on our resumes.
Fair enough. So I wanted to get into the back of the box quote for this game. This is how the official marketing was presented for the title. So let me get my back of box reading voice on.
I'm all ears.
You're taking a Tahoe 155 snowboard down a steep, bumpy incline at night, and you're about to top off an Indy nose bone with a 360-degree air, and you haven't left your living room. You're playing 1080, parentheses 1080, snowboarding, a game so intense you'll be brushing the snow off your goggles. With 5 different borders, 8 different Lamar, registered trademark, snowboards, more than 25 tricks, a half pipe, and 6 different courses. This is as close as you'll get to the real thing without hopping on the next ski lift.
That's intense.
That is intense. I don't know why I read it that way, but I feel like that's what they were feeling when they were typing out the back of that
I
box.
I think the intensity lends to the need to read like that.
I don't think you read the back of Tetris Attack with that voice, but
No,
this game, it felt
far
appropriate.
sleepier. Yeah, I think, and for our younger listeners, this was what there was back in the day. There was magazine stuff, but there weren't like websites and all kinds of stuff. Sometimes literally reading the back of the box in the store was like, shit, I got to get this thing. So
Yeah.
like they had to swing for the fences on some of these things.
Yeah, and they definitely show their age. This game, in multiple points, ages itself as exceedingly 90s. And I think that this is rather indicative of that on the back of the box as well.
I think that is very, very accurate. You ready to hit this 64-point inspection?
Yes, this is going to be the first official use of it, so I'm actually pretty excited about it. Would you mind hitting everybody with the rundown on how this is going to work?
Let's put this thing into action. So, the
Yeah.
64-point inspection is a carefully crafted evaluation designed to judge every Nintendo 64 game through a series of 10 tests. Each test is worth 10 points. For each test, we'll present the evidence, we'll make our case, we'll put it to a vote. And if the game passes the test, it earns 10 points. If it fails, it earns none. And if we are split, then the game will be awarded 5 points. Any game that earns 64 or more points passes the inspection and receives our coveted certified 64 seal of approval. And if a game somehow earns a perfect 100 points, it receives the Player's Choice Award, recognizing it as one of the greatest games, not just on Nintendo 64, but in gaming history. With that out of the way, let's begin the inspection.
All right, I'm excited about this. It sounds a little bit long winded and difficult, hearing it out loud, but I think this is a really cool system that's going to allow us to evaluate games in a unique way. And hopefully, it's going to put each game through its paces. I'm excited to get into this. All right, so test number one, the memory pack test.
I'm sure there was something. Ah, yes, now I remember.
Is this game still remembered today, or has it faded into obscurity? Would the average gamer recognize it in today's gaming climate?
That's a tough one because I feel like it had a sequel, which I think we mentioned in the history lesson, but that even the sequel was many years ago,
Yeah,
and so
1080 Avalanche on the GameCube.
on the
I think. Yeah.
GameCube, I feel like this is tough. I don't know that, like, if I were to mention it to like my kids or something, I don't think they would recognize it.
All right, so you're gonna go. You think you're gonna go fail on that one?
I might now. It has I think we referenced as well before that it does have music in Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. It does have, I believe there's a trophy, at least in the Japanese version. So like there is some relevance, but I don't know that the average, when we say the average gamer, I don't know the average person today is going to remember that.
I'm going to have to agree with you. I'm going to fail this one too. The name is remembered, but the game itself is not. Besides the, completionist collector, N64 worshiper, I do not think that this game carries over. I mean, name a character, right? You can't. Yes, it has some famous or infamous elements to it, particularly when it comes to the music, and it has been referenced in other things, but to your point, this game doesn't have cachet. This IP did not survive. It does not resonate with a current audience. So I'm with you on that one. I'm gonna have to fail it.
I think that's fair.
All right. Moving on to test number two, the Rumble Pack test.
This is the Rumble Pack, the coolest cinematic gaming experience there is.
Does this game really take advantage of what made the Nintendo 64 unique? 4-player multiplayer, analog controls, accessories, and other signature N64 features. All right, what do you think about on this one?
On this one, it's a little bit of a tough call. I will say that the analog stick was absolutely a big deal for this game. I think the level of control that you had, you weren't getting that with a D-pad.
Yeah, no, definitely. This was a really good showcase for the Nintendo 64's analog stick. I 100% agree with you there. The way that the game played and moved felt really fluid for the time, and it was boasted as such. So I think that it really did take advantage of the analog control, and the analog control was a main push for the Nintendo 64 controller. So I think it gets a pass for that alone. But I would also say that it took advantage of the system's memory as well. So it had great replay functionality and features, and you did not need to have a memory card in order to be able to do that. And I think that's impressive as well. So I would give this one a pass.
I think on top of that, I believe it also did have Rumble Pack support, if I'm not mistaken, which also was kind of revolutionary for the Nintendo 64 era. And it's kind of hard to discount it at that era, any game having that, because it was so uncommon. So I'm thinking pass for sure.
Test number 3, the expansion pack test.
That is one powerful piece of machinery.
Does this game deserve an expansion, sequel, remake, or modern successor? Was there enough here to justify a future beyond the original cartridge?
We did mention that it does have a sequel, though it has been some time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think snowboarding games seem to have kind of fallen out of the cultural zeitgeist, as it were, if I'm even using that word correctly. Kind of dumb. I think uh, I wouldn't be against it.
I wouldn't be against it either. I think by the rubric of the test, does this game deserve a sequel? It got one, so I think by default, I think this guy gets a pass for that one.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah, if we
that's
saw the game show up again, I think the brand could be applied to something. It's tricky though because tricky snowboarding pun. The game's name 1080, you can't not call it 1080. Yet the 1080, as we've already discussed, is not necessarily a quintessential move in or have the same prestige as it did at the time. And you can't call it 2 times 1080 or 3 times. It's just not going to work. Or whatever the record now is the 3,400 750,000 degrees.
yeah. I think that's how many feet are in a mile. I think something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
Something like that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it did get a sequel, so that obviously shows that it was popular enough in its era. I think it again, if it came back, I think I would be interested. And of course, now we've got visuals and physics far beyond what this had. I think it would be impressive if they were to come back with something. So I'm for it. Yeah, I think I'll pass it too.
great. All right. Next up, the barrel roll test.
Do a barrel roll. Impressive, Star Fox.
How impressive was this game for its time? Did it push boundaries of technology, gameplay, graphics, scale, or innovation? So, I mean, I'll jump right in on this one. I think it felt extremely impressive at the time. Um, the clothes on your border would ripple in the wind as you went by. The different time of day and weather conditions actually impacted how the players controlled on the different surfaces. You know, you were slippy on the ice, and the thicker powder actually slowed you down. You would actually take less. Like you were less likely to tumble off your board if you landed in the softer snow, and then you could get over to the hard pack and make a better time trial run on everything. It was really impressive, and they made the concessions when they needed to. So you're playing multiplayer, that fog comes in pretty much on every single course, and the character models become lower poly and all
The
that. But
trademark N64 fog.
yes, yeah, that definitely becomes a thing as soon as you start splitting the screens. I mean, they knew what they were working with. It's the plus side of them working specifically on an exclusive game for this hardware. But I think it was impressive, and graphically for the time, it was a pretty remarkable visual. Not only from a technical perspective, but just visually, I think this game really nailed it. So
I think you're right too with the because the question is, of course, did it at the time push the boundaries of technology? It wasn't just something that they shoveled out, and I think it did do a really good job of that. It had, as we mentioned in the history lesson, the pedigree of the developers. Some of those folks had worked on Wave Race, which also had like crazy like water physics, and so they were already really good at this. And so bringing that dynamic to the snow piling up as you take a turn, like and it not just being that you're just going on flat snow and nothing's happening, like the
yeah,
snow would
well,
react.
there
And
were particle effects on this bad boy. I got to pass this one with confidence. I think
I
I
think
think
so.
this game was very impressive for the time, and I don't think it gets enough credit today. To be honest with you, like the characters actually would push themselves back up if they fell down in a realistic way with their hands going in the right direction to make contact with the ground, or at least the animation was done of a caliber where it read like they were actually pushing themselves back up. That's pretty amazing, if they fell forward or if they fell backwards, like that kind of stuff. I mean, I remember back in what, like PS3 era, I want to say it was an Uncharted game, or a game like that, maybe one of the Tomb Raiders. Like if your character got close to the wall, they would like reach out and like brace themselves on the
Yeah.
wall in a way that made sense, or their foot would land on a rock in a way that was believable with them looking like they were shifting their weight. This game kind of alluded to that already, and we're talking back in 1998.
Yeah, this is
So
like almost 10 years before that.
yeah, 1080 did it first.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And like you're mentioning with the snow too, like the you build up a lot more speed in the half pipe than you do over in the other sections. There's sections where the snow is heavier versus versus thinner and harder packed, and like you notice that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a for sure pass.
Yeah, there were strats for that. Like you could land if you were coming off a big jump, try to land in the softer snow right to the side of the main course. You're less likely to bail out, and then you could just hop right over onto the smooth snow, and it was good. An impressive pass for sure.
I think that leads us into the next test as well, the strategy part.
Test number 5, the joystick gymnastics test.
Yeah! Woohoo! Yahoo!
How well does this game play today? Are the controls and camera still enjoyable, or are they working against the player?
I'm a little mixed on this one. I don't mind the camera at all. Camera's great. It does a perfect job. It stays behind your border pretty effectively. It's pretty easy to see what's going on. But I struggled like crazy with the controls. Even now, years on, better at games than I had to have been then. I could not land a 1080. Like in the practice, I'm hitting the half pipe, I'm building up speed. I could not pull it off. So I that one leaves me a little conflicted. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was possible. People are probably great at this game. I struggled.
I'm the opposite. I used to be better at video games, and now I'm substantially worse. And I actually remember being pretty good at this game. It does have a nice when you know how to master the holding down the Z button to crouch to land and absorb the shock and all of that. You do have this satisfying feeling of like, oh, I know what I'm doing here. But this game was pre Tony Hawk, and Tony Hawk has come along and I think done this game dirty. It just does tricks in sporting games better. And I think the genre has moved past this. And while it was a pioneer at the time, I do not think by today's standards these controls hold up. Now I'm absolutely pants at this game. I cannot pull off anything besides an indie nose bone every single time. And I'm not even trying to do it. I just keep getting that one move over and over again, which is a hilariously named move. So, face value, I'm okay with it. But
At least you get to
I'm
see that on the screen a bunch of times. It's funny every
yeah.
time.
Even if I go into the half pipe for like just rack up some points, I'm rubbish at it. There's a mega big jump in one of the courses. You can get you get a lot of air, and it's kind of impossible not to be able to land the fancy tricks on that one. Especially if you've unlocked some of the characters and boards with the better stats. But legitimately, I gotta fail this one. I just don't think that it's as fun to play as people might remember. And I mean, honestly, even back in the day, I was a Twisted Edge snowboarding guy.
Okay.
I'll admit that I played that game over this one, and I will willingly admit that this is a superior game to Twisted Edge. But Twisted Edge was more fun for me. I felt better getting good at playing that game than I did this one, and I think that's telling where it stands, especially now after all this time, at least in my eyes.
I think a key to the test too is that in the barrel roll test, it's how impressive was it at the time. Joystick gymnastics as has emphasis on does it play well still now. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, that's a
it,
good way of looking at it. We need to make
it
sure we maintain that moving forward.
yeah, in its era, it was very revolutionary. And for its era, the controls were okay. But if you go back and try to play it now, after like you said all the advancements we've made and things that have moved forward through other games, playing this now you're like, I don't even know if I can do this because we've gotten better ways of doing it.
Yeah. Oh, and you want to know one thing that is kind of bullshit? I always thought this back in the day, but the other racers don't take damage when they collide, even if they collide with you or if they fall over. They just pop right back up and they're good to go. I mean, like we said, they look impressive as they push themselves back up, but they don't take damage for it. You take damage over time. So, if you're colliding with them and you're competing against them, you're trying to beat these races, unless you pull off like a perfect run and they're not pulling off the perfect run in the same spot of the course that you are also, they have an unfair advantage. So that just sort of like drives home the irritation on this, to be honest with you. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
I
You
got to
fall
fail
too
this
many
one.
times and your damage meter go and it just says you're done, you're out. Like
Yeah.
so you have to avoid falling because you have a limited number of times you can fall and they don't.
Yep. And it irises to black and the music winds down and you're done. All right, moving on. Test number 6, the bump to the bass test.
Here, here, here we go.
How good is this game's audio? Does it have memorable music, iconic sound effects, or the kind of soundtrack that sticks with you long after you've put the controller down?
This one I'm gonna have to probably largely defer to you because you have much fonder and deeper memories of it. I like I said, haven't played it as much until recently. So like the music is not something that's sticking with me as much as if I had
Interesting.
played a ton of it when I was younger.
Okay, well, if we're going to defer to me, then you're passing this bad boy because this game had some awesome music to it. And it's awesome in a kind of like looking back at it, terribly bad way. Um, but man, that like 1080 music that would play during the main menu, where it's just like 1080, and then this guy just starts like yelling like ga 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 for no reason, and then it goes into some sort of like weird chanting at one point. It's like gum gabba labba labba labba. It's like corn meets
Oh,
some
oh
like
yeah.
really crappy compressed audio treatment on a microphone. It's awesome. I love it, and I remember it extremely fondly. The only thing I would say that I remember more than that was the music that they would play during the menu, where it was just like rock your body, rock rock, or work your body, work your body, or something like that. That got
I
stuck
do
in my
remember
head
that.
like mad. That was an earworm for sure. So yeah,
I th-
I gotta pass this one as far as memorable music for better or worse.
I have definitely seen going back and playing some of these games for research as we're kind of ramping up doing more of these episodes. There's some really questionable music choices in the mid to late 90s for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely some odd. If you listen to the lyrics to some of the electronic music they have in this, it's a little questionable. But you know, I think it's good. And like I said, I stand by that 1080 intro music. I want that on the Nintendo Music app. I don't know if it's in there. I never use that app, but if that is, that's on everyone. That should be on everybody's workout playlist. I think that is straight up murder music. I think, well, quite literally, actually. I think that's a must have. So I'm passing this one.
I'm going to take a look at the app actually and get back to you on that. But I do think though it should get a pass just because of the type of music, because we're talking extreme sports. Extreme sports has always kind of been a little more of the punk rock, the heavier metal type stuff. So I think, and then occasional like hip hop tossed in. So I think it probably checks the boxes that it needed to, and you can't fault it for being correct.
All right, on board. So that's a pass. Moving on, test number 7, the Smash Invite Test.
Will this battler live up to expectations?
Does this game have characters, worlds, music, or ideas worthy of a place in Super Smash Bros.?
So for this one, I actually do have a list of the characters from the game. And so, and I do, they're just people. They're not, there's not anything
You
like,
can be honest. They're kind of rough. They're kind of rough.
I do like some of the names. So we have Kensuke Kimachi, who is
Hmm.
a 19-year-old from Japan, known in Japan for his snowboarding skills. We've got Dion Blaster, which is a pretty sick name to go with the snowboarding theme. It's pretty sick.
He's like the big buff British guy in this game.
Yeah, he's 28. He's from the UK.
That
One of
sounds
the best
cool.
overall snowboarders. Fast, strong, not great with tricks. We've got Rob
He's great with
Haywood.
chicks. How dare you besmirch the name of Dion
He might be
Blaster?
great with
He's
chicks.
great with everything.
With a name like Dion Blaster, he's great with the chicks, probably. Rob Haywood, 20 from Seattle. And this one, actually, there's a little bit of lore behind the scenes. There's another guy named Ricky Winterbourne, which is pretty on the nose
Is
for
he
someone who is from
from Canada?
Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, Winterbourne. And it's weird. It says he's 14 in this. And it says that Rob joined the team because he knows Ricky's dad.
Ooh,
So that's a
world
little bit of lore
building.
behind the
Nice.
scenes that you would not have known if you did not read the manual to this game, but it's in there. I read it. And it is also interesting to note that Rob and Ricky both appear in 1080 Avalanche and in Wave Race Blue Storm on the GameCube. So they
No,
are,
wait. Do they age them up? So
I
canonically
think, a
and
little bit. I think one they do. I
chronologically?
think from what I saw that Ricky gets a couple years older, but Rob doesn't, I think is what I saw, which is a little strange.
That's problematic. Okay.
And they're both, I guess, good at also jet skiing on top of, so that's cool. And they're, I guess, lifelong friends, or depending on how time works, since one got older, I don't know if that counts as lifelong or not. And then the last one is
Mhm.
Akari Hayami, who is a 17-year-old girl from also Japan, and is relatively new to the sport, and is actually also both in those other two games. and is apparently available as a spirit in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I was about to say, well, that sounds like with the exception of Dion Blaster, that sounds like the most boring lineup of boring people ever, who would never get invited to Smash Brothers in any way, shape, or form. But apparently, I am wrong in that. So I guess we have to pass this by default because it's already in Smash Brothers.
I actually do have a note here. It says that Kensuke Komachi also does appear as a gold trophy in the
Ooh,
Japanese version of Smash Brothers Melee and was proposed as a character for Brawl, but they did pass on that. So I'm with you. I think
probably a
that
good choice.
if they considered, well, and I guess there's a line to that, they considered it enough, but they chose not to. So I think maybe the ball is in our court to make that decision. There is also the Iceman, the Gold Border, and the Panda, whose names are all fairly self explanatory, who are unlockable characters, but I don't
Yeah.
know we want to toss them in or not. So,
We could toss them in. I think it's fair to include the idea, but I mean, the idea of this this category is Smash Brothers is recognized as the kingmaker, right? If you're relevant enough to be referenced in Smash Brothers, then you're a relevant game. Some of the references are, hey, you've got a main playable character, or you could be a trophy, or you could be a background cameo, whatever it might be. Obviously, they expanded it with the whole spirits and stickers and all of that kind of stuff. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the biggest reference in the world, but is your game a big enough impact to be included in that? So I think I have to pass this.
yeah, I guess if
On
they
face
have
value,
been,
though, I would have said absolutely not, but I have been proven
yeah,
wrong.
I
So
get
I will
the
will sit
research
down and shut
proof
up.
that maybe it is. And I think it also, believe said earlier that music was also included. So there's been more than one piece that they felt was worth including. So I guess I'll give it a
All
pass.
right. Okay. Okay. Cool. Levels wise, there aren't really any levels that can necessarily make it into the game either. But that's another category as far as a way that a game could appear in Smash Brothers. I will say on the note of levels, the opening course for this game is called Crystal Lake. It is not the Crystal Lake of Jason Voorhees' Friday the
Well, not as
13th
far as we
fame.
know. It could be,
Well,
right?
that's true. It's true. Maybe if you play the game long enough, Jason Voorhees runs out like Yeti monster style, like in Ski Free, and just murders you if you run out of time. Actually, that'd be pretty cool. And then he should probably get the nod for Smash Brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an additional ninth character that's been hidden all this time, and it's Jason, and none of us knew.
As you're snowboarding, that the murder music from the intro is like, and then Jason Voorhees jumps out of a bush and murders you. All right, you know what? If they can do that and that makes it into Smash Brothers, then I completely changed my tune.
Well, there you go. And he's already winter ready, right? He's got a, hockey mask.
He's
He's
ready
kind
to
of a
roll.
winter sports guy. So I could see it. Yeah. He might be, maybe we get that sequel one of these days and they toss him in
I
there.
think we just wrote it for it. So yeah, absolutely.
Nintendo, if you're listening, Shiggy, if you hear us, produce that one too.
All right, all right. So begrudgingly, I think this one's got to be a pass.
I'll take it. I'll mark it down.
Test number 8, the 101% test.
Oh, they are running up the score.
Is this game worth fully completing? Are the extra challenges, collectibles, and secrets worth the effort? You already touched on this. Gold Border. You unlock Gold Border, fantastically named. There's also Crystal Man and a Panda Head that you can unlock. You kind of get these things by, I think, Gold Border you get by basically completing absolutely everything. And Crystal Man you get by beating all of I want to say it's all of the staff records, or maybe that's the Panda Head. And I think there's a penguin snowboard as well. So these rewards you get, but and they have some cool features, as in, you know, excellent stats, and they're really good for nailing all the tricks. But in order to get them, you kind of have to have already nailed all the tricks. So I don't know if I can pass this one. I'd have to fail it, to be honest with you. I don't think the rewards are really worth it
Yeah.
as far as the efforts go. I mean, there is a certain satisfaction you get by mastering a game like this, but as far as the carrot being dangled, Gold Man and Crystal Man are just a palette swap, and the Panda Head is just a big modification to an existing character. So
I think that's a pretty good point. I think it's a good way of putting it. Like you said, you already have to be so good at the game that being rewarded with a character who's better than the other characters that you already got really good at using isn't much of a reward. It just makes it easier to do what you've already gotten really good at. And like you said, I think at that point you've already done so much and completed so much of the game that you don't have much else to see. You're just seeing it faster.
Yeah, what's the incentive, right? And then once you've got these characters unlocked, what you can show off to people that you have them in multiplayer, but then everyone's just going to choose those characters. Like, why would you not choose the character with the best stats every time in multiplayer? There's literally no reason not to choose the best board and the best character. That's another thing that's a little bit of a shame with this game is that you just look at the stats of the boards. There's quite literally no reason to use 90% of the boards in this game.
Yeah.
Based on the statistics. I mean, you could pick one just because you think it looks cool, but you can't really see the board while you're playing it anyway. So,
And
yep,
there's a couple of those I think that you unlock on top of the character. But it's the same thing. You work really hard to get it, then you get the faster board, and it either just makes you more competitive or it makes the game easier. But you've already had to work hard to get it, so it's not quite the same thing as some really cool Easter egg or something that gets revealed
yeah.
because you put in the effort. So I'm with you. I don't think we necessarily have to pass that one.
I think it's also another case of Tony Hawk doing this game dirty. Poor Tony Hawk did Dion Blaster dirty. They had the coolest secret characters. Like, you're not getting Darth Maul going down a mountain.
Yeah,
It can't compete. I just don't think that it's, unfortunately. I just don't think it's on that level. So, yep, that's a fail.
yeah.
Test number 9, Wario's wallet.
Oh my God!
Is sorry, that sound effect.
Just thinking about the sound effect.
Oh, so good. Is this game worth the price of admission today? If you're spending modern collector money, are you getting your money's worth? So we have looked this up for you. Let me read you the numbers on it. So according to pricecharting.com, the loose price for this game is currently sitting at $15.76 USD. And a complete version of it, which is opened but box and manual included, would set you back at about $44.73 is the average. So for a clean eBay cart find, non-stickered, non-marked up, you're probably looking at about 18 to 20 bucks American for this game.
That's not bad.
I will also add that it is available now on the Switch 2 expansion pack online service as well, so you can play it on there as well. So in my opinion, I think this game is worth it for the price. For 15 bucks to have this game, especially if you're
That's
a
not bad.
collector,
Yeah.
it's kind of a no-brainer. When you look at some of the prices on some of these other games, this is,
And I think too, it's not a bad game. Like, it's one
no,
thing if you're paying 20 bucks and the game isn't good, or if you're paying, way more because it was uncommon because nobody bought it in the first place. But it's a decent game that plays well and it isn't super expensive. I think that's pretty fair.
yeah,
And I don't think it being available on an online service, that's like 20 bucks a year or whatever it is for the Nintendo service. Or with the expansion pack, it's a little more than that. But
yeah, no, it is.
I think that doesn't necessarily cheapen it. You can still play it. It's in its original form. But if you wanted to seek it out, and full disclosure, because we haven't revealed that quite as much, Jamie is attempting to collect the entire 64 library, not
Yes,
complete in box. I think mostly just loose cartridges,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
functional and in good shape. So, I'd say that $15 is a pretty small ask
yeah.
to be able to collect that.
Now, even if you're not trying to take on, the entire library like I'm doing at the moment, potentially foolishly, I would say if you're just trying to get like the big titles for the N64 or all the exclusive ones that were a big deal, or even just the first party ones that are worth having, I wouldn't say this is at the top of the list, unless you're doing them alphabetically. I
Yeah,
would say
yeah.
that it is one that's worth having to have a fully rounded out sample. It's a good sports game on the N64, and it's a good example of a game of the time. Are you going to love playing this now, especially if you didn't play it back in the day? No, probably not. Are you going to enjoy playing it when you've got certain memories in your head as to what you remember it controlling as? I would say, based on what we've talked about, also probably not. But for the price and for a collector, I do think that this is worth grabbing for that price. And as you said, even though you can play it elsewhere in different capacities, there's something about playing the original hardware. And yeah, I got to pass this one.
Yeah, and it's a pretty low barrier to entry, so I think it's a pretty easy pass. And actually, you just mentioned having those specific memories. That brings us to the last category.
Fantastic segue, sir.
You like that?
I do. I do.
I'm gonna be pretty good at this one day.
Test number 10, the nostalgia goggles test. Does this game genuinely hold up today, or is its reputation being carried by nostalgia?
And I don't know if you've been keeping score, and I'm not going to reveal my hand, but this is a pretty crucial category based on where we are right now. So I do vividly remember, as someone who did not have an opportunity to play this, or at least didn't play it much, I don't really remember, that the name was pretty iconic, that the artwork was pretty iconic. I remember, especially back then, games were not cheap. They're not cheap now, but they were even less cheap then with inflation and stuff. Some of them were over 80, $85 in some cases, and that's a lot of money
Yeah.
by today's standards. So you didn't always have every game. We didn't have the internet in quite the same form to watch videos. So a lot of what I remember about it from a nostalgia standpoint is looking at Nintendo Power magazines, because I could look at the screenshots 100 times and go, "What is this game?" Like, or talking to people about it. And there is a little bit of that when the game is mentioned, I know what game people are talking about. So I don't know that necessarily, like, even having not played it, of course, being a person with some amount of enthusiasm and appreciation for the medium of video games, I think it is something, though, that when you say it, there are people who are going to go, "Man, I totally remember that." So I think there is maybe a bit of that where the nostalgia is involved, but does it hold up? I think some of its contributions are of note, but like you've said a couple of times as we've gone through this, there are other extreme sports games that have since surpassed this, or maybe they were a little flashier. Like we mentioned SSX in passing unintentionally as part of a pun. And we've talked about uh, the Twisted Edge, and there's other games like Snowboard Kids that we will eventually talk about. And I think with some of those games, the whimsy, which I'm sure we will reference a number of times in this program,
It's a good word.
over
It's a good
over this
word.
endeavor, I think that whimsy is going to come up a bunch, and this doesn't have a ton of whimsy.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it's very corporate, right? I mean, it's got the Tommy Hilfiger branding on it. It's got the Lamar boards. It's it's almost like a commercial in a capacity, in some capacity, a commercial and showcase for the Nintendo 64. I think it was promoted. You said you saw it on all the boxes, you saw it on all the magazine articles,
Yeah.
and there's a reason for that. Like these were some sexy screenshots for the time, and it was very impressive as we talked about. But when you look at it now, I think unless you drank the Kool Aid then and spent the time to make this your game, because as you said, look, I can't afford a bunch of games. I'm stuck with this game all summer, and really, dedicated yourself to 1080 snowboarding. I do not think that this game has stood the test of time, both from a franchise and an IP perspective, but also just as an individual title. People talk about the game, but let's be honest, they talk about the title because of the name,
Yeah.
and they talk about it only in select conversations when they're talking about the Nintendo 64's library. It's one of the reasons why we did this episode first, to get this one, almost out of the way, to be perfectly honest with you. It's alphabetically more important than I think it is culturally. So
Wow. Yeah, that's a good way of putting
for
it.
me, I don't like to be. I like to find the good in everything, and there's a lot of good here. But for a pass fail category, I think I have to fail this one.
And I think I do too. I think another level of that too is, as I became an adult and had adult money, which, as I say, became, I mean, very loosely, because I'm still really not quite there. But as far as becoming an adult, there was a time when some of these games were not quite as sought after, and I probably could have gone and picked this game up for $3 or $4, probably 10 or 15 years ago, and I didn't. And I think there's something to be said for that. That it was a game that I knew a lot about, and there are games where I've seen them and go, I'm going to pick that up. It's a game I heard about a bunch of times. I never got a chance to play it. And what's $3 or $4 to play it? And in the past, whatever it is, 20 years or so, that I've been loosely an adult and had money and gone to the occasional used game store, this is not something that stuck out like I need to get that. And I think there might be some sort of uh, significance to the fact that it didn't jump out to me in that way.
No, yeah, it's indicative of how you feel about the game.
We sound
It's
smart.
like I was saying before. I think that if you have nostalgia for this game, I can't argue with you.
Right.
But in general, broadly speaking, I don't think that this game carries anything beyond nostalgia, and its relevance for the time and its showcase of the console. But in today's day and age, I don't think it holds up.
I think with some of that, you could almost put it through the lens of, if I were opening some sort of museum or showcase and I needed to pick not even a small number, not 5. If I needed to pick 25 games for each platform that I was featuring in that museum, would this be in there? And I don't think it would.
I don't think it would be in there for the Nintendo 64, and I don't think it would be in there for snowboarding. So right off the bat, I think that's our answer right there.
There you go. Well, I have done the math. I've got everything calculated up here, and that comes out to a total of 60. So very close. But 1080 snowboarding, you are not 64 certified.
You almost had it.
So yeah, I it's a tough one. It's close. I think it's a really good testament to this test, this endeavor, which is a word I used earlier. I'm going to try not to use it too many times, but in this experiment, this thing that we're doing that Jamie has crafted and put together, I think this is a really good indication of how this is going to work. That this is a game that is decently well remembered. I remember being super hyped about it, and it didn't quite make it, but it didn't completely fall apart. And I think we're going to have a lot of games that are really close like that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think a 60% is a fair score for this game. I think that's kind of hard to argue with, regardless of how we got to it. I think that's fair. One thing I do think is interesting, did we agree on every single category on this one, or do we have any split votes? I think
we did not have any split. We had a couple that were pretty close. I think probably Bum to the Base was probably one of the ones that was the closest.
Oh yeah, I kind of stole that point from you, didn't I?
Well, and I didn't have a ton of memories, but based on what music I have heard and knowing about the type of music, it fit what it was set out to do. And I think that's important. It may not be the most memorable music in the world, but it fit what it was meant to do. It's not just genuinely bad music. It's not legendary, but I think it checked the box like it should have. So this was a pretty close one. If we had split, then it would have been maybe even less close than it was.
All right. Came down to the wire for it. So there you have it at the end of our patented, very expensive, very fancy, and thoroughly untested system.
Well, and now tested, at least.
Yeah. Singularly tested system. 1080 degree snowboarding. You are not certified 64.
There you go. It maybe we're wrong. Maybe you guys want to make a case for this. Anyone listening wants to make a case for this. We'll share some social channels. We've got a Discord. We'll have a thread for each game. And so if it is something where you want to come, maybe give us a little bit of your insight on this, maybe something that you agree with or disagree with, we'll have a place to do that. And so we'd really appreciate you coming and sharing your input on this game with us, because maybe we didn't quite nail it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us where we're wrong, or congratulate us on being 100% correct.
100%.
Either one. And in future episodes, we can read back some of this feedback and see where our audience is. And, do we have the right thoughts going on this one, or are we completely missing the mark? So, yeah. All right, moving forward. This next section, before we put the cartridge back on the shelf, is called Lobo Learnings. In this segment, we take a look at today's game through the eyes of an indie developer. What lessons can we learn from it decades later? What ideas are worth borrowing? What mistakes should be avoided? What made this game work? And how might those principles apply to a game in development today? So this section is actually brought to you shamelessly by Lobo Destroyo, which is our own Nintendo 64-inspired 3D platforming adventure that we're currently developing. If you're enjoying this show and you're a fan of the Nintendo 64 and you'd like to follow our game development journey, we'd love to have you for the ride. You can learn more about Lobo Destroyo and join our Discord community. You can find all the links on all of our socials at lobodestroyo.com. That's LOBODESTROYO.com. Ridiculously long URL. Should have thought about that before naming it. But so building an independent game is kind of a long road. So every like, follow, share, community member, it really does help more than you might realize. Showcase the enthusiasm for our titles. So check it out and maybe consider giving us a follow. If you like the Cartridge Archive and want to support what we're building, we really appreciate it. So that's the end of my little shameless self-promotion there under the guise of a show sponsor. But let's put 1080 degree snowboarding up to the Lobo Learnings magnifying glass and see what we can take away from it.
Yeah, two things. I think Lobo Destroyo is a pretty awesome and iconic name. I think that's awesome.
Oh, you're too kind.
My Lobo learning from this was that Shigeru Miyamoto should be the producer. And so I don't know if you have him involved in Lobo Destroyo.
That's a good note. That's a good note. We should totally do that.
Is that what the Lobo lesson is?
Well, you know what? That's actually better than my Lobo lesson. So we'll just throw away my notes because that one kind of trumps it. I feel
I
like
don't know.
that would,
He's busy though. He's probably going to retire one of these days.
yeah. Well, I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah, no. So actually, as far as the Lobo learnings on this game, I mean, obviously, Lobo Destroyo, 3D action collectathon platformer, not a technical showcase snowboarding sports game. But there are some things that 1080 does really well that I think can be incorporated, if not in Lobo, then games in general. And the first thing that stood out to me in this was the use of skyboxes. The skyboxes in this game are killer. When you're talking about an era where you have compressed textures and limitations, they did a really good job of making some phenomenal skyboxes. And the way that they use them to hide where the seams are in the skyboxes with the angle of the playable, the geometric playing space, it's really good. They knew what they were doing, and it works so well. And the testament to it is when you lose the skybox, aka playing multiplayer, and the fog of war comes in, it's a completely different experience as far as the setting of the game that you're playing. Obviously, when it's super stormy and you can't see the skybox, that's intentional. I understand that. But the skybox in general themselves are just really well done. And for those of you who don't know, a skybox is basically a giant 3D cube that exists around a game world's geometry that implies the horizon line and sky and the surrounding space that isn't actually part of the explorable scene. So it's imagery that's designed to look like an extension of the scene, but it in and of itself is actually flat 6 sides of a cube, which your game world exists inside of. And where those cube corners meet, obviously you've got a hard edge and a corner, and there's a puckering effect where a skybox, it's evident if you look at it and you know where the scene is, you can tell where the corners are, especially if you look in the tips where you've got 3 sides all coming together. You can really tell where those are. 1080 does an amazing job of positioning their game worlds within their skyboxes in a capacity where you can tell. And I think that deserves to be commended. And that's something that can apply to any game or any 3D game. And I would definitely take that as a Lobo learning for this one. And the other thing that I would add also is just the menu selection. The menu for this game, where everyone's sitting in that cabin, just chilling, hanging out, while that awesome, in my opinion, music is playing. They're just kind of hanging out there. And when you highlight over them, you rotate the camera around this 3D space and you look at them in the room. They're leaning up against like Tommy Hilfiger branded apparel and stuff as they're cleaning their snowboards or just chilling. And when you highlight them, they look up at you and they're like, "Hey, what's up?" And then if you cancel out, they're like, "Okay, never mind." And you can
yeah,
it's just.
I think it's cool too because it adds a lot of character. Because like for the most part, if you're playing this game, you see the backs of the characters. So for that small moment, there's maybe a little bit more personality than there is on the board. You get to see a face, kind of put a little bit of character to them. And like you said, it's kind of just cool. Like the menu doesn't have to be that involved. And of course, nowadays our menus are extremely sterile on many games. It's just a matter of just picking something off the list, and there's some nice art behind it, maybe a typeface or font involved, but not anything that's real flashy. So to have something like this, once you get in there and character select is so much more involved, it is cool. It adds a lot of character to something that otherwise could be pretty lifeless.
Yeah, and especially, well, just in general, a snowboarding game, right? Like it's an action-oriented, sports-focused title. That's not all that much room unless you're doing some sort of wacky gimmick to it. And this is a pretty, straight and narrow simulation style game, right? For the most part, it was just a really good way to give it a little bit of something to make it different and give it some personality and flex those character models, like you're saying. And I think it's a really good choice and one of the more memorable moments of this game.
Yeah.
So I would put the skybox use and their menu selections as things that can be aspired to and pulled from for current games.
Yeah, those are awesome points. We'll see how many of those things we end up seeing in Lobo Destroyo. I think the skybox thing that's not something I'm aware of skyboxes, but I don't look at them in the same way. So it's really interesting to hear them from the standpoint of someone who is actively creating things like that.
Yeah, just don't look too closely at Lobo skyboxes now that you know where the pucker points are, right?
This by the time we're done with all this episode will be so long ago, people won't even be thinking about that part. They'll be thinking about all the other things that make Lobo great.
Oh, you're too kind.
So that said, 1080 Snowboarding's cartridge goes back on the shelf with a score of 60 out of 100 and does not earn certified 64 status.
That's it for us for episode number 1. I think that went pretty well for a maiden voyage. I'm looking forward to doing more of these games and seeing this thing grow. I'm sure it's going to be an ever evolving process. So we appreciate your patience as we kind of learn and figure this thing out. But yeah, from us, I think that's a big thank you, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And I look forward to many more. I think it went great. And hopefully everyone else feels the same way. So we will see you in the next one. The Cartridge Archive was created by Jamie Guy and is produced and hosted by Jamie Guy and Adam Jones. Our music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. Visit thecartridgearchive.com for more information or join our Discord. You can find links to both of those at tap2add.me/TCApod. That's tap2add.me/TCApod. You'll find that and all of our other links in the show notes. More episodes of the Cartridge Archive are available wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, thanks for listening.